Hello, welcome to the FPL News channel. This video is covering all 20 Premier League press conferences ahead of the Game Week 13 deadline. That is Saturday morning, 11 a.m. GMT. We start with West Ham. Jared Bowen faces a late fitness test ahead of the Hammers game at Burnley tomorrow. They're the 3 p.m., one of the 3 p.m. kickoffs. So we might get news later on Friday or on Saturday morning as to whether Bowen has travelled or not. The likelihood is that he will travel because that's what Moyes has basically said. So they hope he'll be available. They're going to make a decision tomorrow. So, yeah, it is very likely that he's going to go with the squad to Burnley and they're going to test him pre-match. I mentioned on Twitter earlier in the week that he probably wasn't a definite sell from what we knew so far. And yeah, it sounds like even if he's out for 13, he should probably be available for 14. West Ham have Europe next midweek as well, so there'll be two pre-match pressers from Moyes ahead of the Game Week 14 deadline. So I think with Bowen, it's probably as simple as if you own, hold on to him. If you don't own, I wouldn't be buying him right now. I wouldn't captain him this week. He had looked like a good option, but yeah, I wouldn't captain him this week now. And yeah, I think it's a hold, especially if you have some decent bench. You just put him in your starting 11. Hope that he passes this fitness test. Is definitely going to be after the deadline. So we will not find out if he's in the starting lineup pre-deadline. And yeah, if you have anyway decent bench cover, I think you should be happy enough to start him. I have not put him in the predicted lineup just because, yeah, I think it's maybe more likely that he won't start. It's really hard to tell when a player's going to have a late fitness test or going to have a late fitness test. That's going to be the decider. Moyes also said, yeah, we won't be making a decision on it today about Bowen. So, yeah, the prediction does not have him in, but yeah, it's all going to be down where he passes that. And yeah, if I owned him, I would just put him in my FPL 11 and yeah, hope that he starts. So the predicted lineup is Areola in goal, Emerson and Sofal at fullback, Beard and Zoom at centre back, Alvarez and Ward-Prowse in central midfield, Souček in that role behind the striker. Souček could be a really interesting FPL prospect. Antonio is out for 2 to 3 weeks. So I have Kudus up front. There was also a doubt over him. Moyes was not asked about him in the press conference. So Kudus is another one that I wouldn't be investing in right now. But I think if he's fit, he's probably going to... And if Bowen is out, that he'll play up front. And I have Paquette on the left and Ben Rama on the right. Yeah, if Bowen is fit, he'll be playing up front. And Kudus would move to the right. So yeah, it will be interesting to see what the news is from Turf Moor an hour before kickoff, which is obviously well past deadline. But yeah, late fitness test for Bowen. So those will be interesting to see this evening. I'll tweet any out if they become available. And the great thing is that Man City play the early kickoff. So if you can, getting online half an hour before the deadline, particularly if you own Haaland and want to captain him, probably be wise. There might be a team leak. Again, if there's something definite or trustworthy, I'll retweet it or put it out there on X or whatever it is. If it comes from a trusted source. So yeah, I think it's probably wait for that and make a call with a half an hour or 20 minutes left, see if there's any early team news, team leaks on Saturday morning. The deadline is 11 a.m. GMT, Saturday morning, that's tomorrow. So that's probably the best advice on Haaland, to be honest. I guess his expected minutes are going to be a little bit dented by the fact that he's obviously carrying something. But the fact that he's training, they're playing Liverpool. I do think it's likely that he will start. Otherwise, for City, Pep didn't give anything on anyone else really. The doubts at the moment are over Ake, Kovacic and Nunes, so squad players all flagged. So for the predicted lineup, for anyone listening, Ederson in goal. Again, he missed Brazil duty, but is expected to be fine. Gvardiol, Akanji, Diaz and Walker, the back four. Obviously, Akanji can invert there to leave that as a back three, depending on how Pep wants to set up against Liverpool in particular for this game week. Silva and Rodri in midfield. An attacking trio, I guess, of Grealish, Alvarez and Foden. You'd usually see Foden pushing into more central positions, and again, depending on how the back four is working, Walker providing some width, and then Haaland up top. So that is the same lineup that faced Chelsea, apart from I think Grealish is going to start over Doku. It just seems like more of a Grealish game, one where Pep might want a bit more control, and that's what Grealish offers over Doku. For Aston Villa, John McGinn should be available. Came back from the international break with a knock, but he trained on Friday and has told Emery that he's good to go. So expect him to continue. There are doubts over Leon Bailey, Emi Martinez, and Nicolo Zaniolo. Martinez came back with a small pain, Emery said. He'll almost definitely play. Considering Bailey and Zaniolo are both doubts, I reckon Tielemans is going to continue there in midfield. Matty Cash is absolutely fine. He's got that flag, but as I tweeted there earlier in the week, it was kind of a late flag that came up because he didn't travel international duty, but he trained yesterday. So he should be absolutely fine. Emery didn't even mention him in the presser, I'd say. There's no issue there at all. It was just probably a precautionary measure, a bit like Udogie. So expecting Cash to play. Emery also referenced having Moreno and Jacob Ramsey back is important for them. Moreno was on the bench in Game Week 12. Ramsey was not. So they're probably two players who could be getting minutes in the weeks to come, but they have long injuries to come back from too. So I mean, if I owned Dean, I wouldn't really be sweating it. So the predicted lineup for those listening on the podcast is Martinez in goal, Dean at left back, Cash at right back, Torres and Konsa in the centre, Luiz and Kamara in central midfield, Tielemans, Diaby and McGinn forming an attacking trio behind Ollie Watkins. And if we find out nothing, I would be pretty confident to leave the armband on him. I think he will start. So that's the Manchester City view. Just finished listening to Roberto De Zerbi's press conference. Interesting as always. Karim Matoma is out. So Andy Naylor, who I referenced in the early team news video, was spot on that Matoma unavailable for game week 13. That is the same situation with James Milner. Both pictured in training on Thursday, but not available for the match. De Zerbi has said that both will work with them on either Sunday if there's training or on Monday. That was kind of in reference to a question about their Europa League game next week. So we will get further Matoma news next week. De Zerbi will be speaking on Wednesday. But he is out for game week 13. Lewis Dunk is available. So too is Tariq Lamptey. His minutes won't be huge in game week 13. They'll be easing him back in, but De Zerbi did talk about the importance of having him back just because they're really light on fullbacks. He kind of basically said that Joel Veltman is for the only actual fullback that they have been able to use in the last few games. And Purvis Estupiñán is out long term. Spoke about him during the week as well and how I didn't expect him to be available anytime soon, and yeah, he's going to be out for a while. De Zerbi just basically doesn't know or didn't want to say how long. He wouldn't put his time scale on it, but he says he thinks for a long time, so that's going to be at least a couple of months, and we will probably get more on that in the coming weeks. But yeah, if you happen to still own a Stupinan, he's an easy sell now. Other than that, yeah, trying to break the Brighton lineup is people might describe it as a nightmare. My goal with that is steal and goal. He keeps chopping and changing the goalkeeper, so yeah, I just wouldn't invest for FPL. It's very hard to know who's going to play in goal. If Igor Julio is available, I think he will play at left back nominally, but he was referenced as a doubt by De Zerbi, so I've gone for Veltman at left back, Gross playing at right back with Van Heck and Dunk as centre halves. I think Webster has an issue as well. So I don't think he's going to be available. Gilmore and Baliba in midfield. Dahoud is obviously suspended after Game Week 12. Evan Ferguson played again for Ireland for about a half an hour, surprisingly, early in the week, and he was pictured in training. And as I've said, yeah, this lineup is really hard to predict. For this one, I've gone with Lallana in the centre attack midfield role, Dinger on the left, Fatty on the right, and Pedro up front. That could be interchangeable between Pedro and Fatty. We haven't really seen much or any of that so far. I just think that Ferguson might not start. But yeah, if you own, it's actually really tough. I don't think anyone really knows. I'm not even sure if De Zerbi knows. He's just choppy and changing it so much, and he has said that he doesn't actually want to do that much. It's just down to availability and things like that. So yeah, particularly hard to call who's going to play up front for Brighton. Generally, who's going to play for Brighton. But that is my go at their predicted lineup. Will always be interesting to see the Brighton team sheet. Who starts, who doesn't. Yeah, I think if you want a Dingra, he's pretty guaranteed to start, I would say. It could easily be Buonanotte on the right-hand side again. I'm just not sure if he's going to start 2 games in a row. He got hooked at half-time against Sheffield United as well. Now, it was Matoma they brought on for him, and obviously they won't have that option available in Game Week 13. But yeah, the Brighton one it's very tough to invest in really any of them at the moment. I happen to own a Dinger myself, but will probably be getting rid soon. Decent option, but yeah, I kind of bought just at the point where it was could have gone Palmer as well, but it wasn't such a lock to go Palmer, and he had Man City. But yeah, I think you would definitely be going Palmer over Dinger every time at the moment. So that is the lowdown on Brighton. For Chelsea, Mauricio Pochettino has confirmed that Reece James will start against Newcastle tomorrow. That's in Game Week 13. I can see why people are going to Reece James, because there's kind of a lack of options in defence, and he at 5.3 he's got enormous potential. Sounds as if they will try and give him as many minutes as possible tomorrow. For me, it's a wait and watch. See how he gets on with that and how he responds to playing. We'll see how many minutes. There's obviously huge risk attached in buying him, especially Game Week 14 to 16, being such a congested period, and the Christmas kind of crunch also. And the possibility of him coming off before 60 minutes is very real in any game, really. Once he's all right tomorrow, he should make it past 60 minutes, but it is away to Newcastle all the same, so I'm not sure if it's the greatest fixture ever. Obviously Newcastle are struggling a little bit, and Chelsea are, finding a bit of form. So yeah, Reece James, I mean, I can definitely see the huge temptation. I don't doubt I'll be tempted myself at some stage. It's just with the games being so close together and December being such a huge month of football that, like, he's not playing every 3 days, he's not starting every 3 days. But hey, look, once you know that and you just want to take a chance on his explosivity, absolutely understandable. Otherwise, for Chelsea, the big news is that Nkunku is unavailable. I tweeted out some quotes from Pochettino before Game Week 12, and he said how he had been talking to Nkunku, and the player had previously said before this chat that he was looking at the Newcastle fixture to be back, and then when Pochettino talked to him, it was just pre-Game Week 12, we'll say, Nkunku wasn't so sure, and yeah, as it turns out, he was right to think it was probably going to take him a little longer to get back. So he's not available for 13. I think people might have been a bit worried that he could have been available and that he would take penalties off Palmer. Don't need to worry about it now anyway because he's not coming back anytime soon. And yeah, if you read the rest of the quotes, they're on my Twitter. Basically, they're going to ease him back in, which makes perfect sense because it's such a long-term injury. And again, just to reference the amount of games that they're going to play in December, even when he does come back, he's going to be eased in off the bench and he's not going to get anywhere near 90 minutes to start, as in to start with once he is back available, and he has to train fully before that. So yeah, in terms of Palmer on that penalty score, there's no worries. I don't really think Palmer's going to lose the penalties after scoring 4 anyway. But yeah, it's just not a consideration for another good few weeks and probably into the new year because it's going to take Nkunku time. It'd be great to see him playing when he's fit, but clearly not an FPL option, and yeah, he's not going to threaten pitch time or penalties for the time being. And lastly on Chelsea, Levi Colwill is available. I'll just go through the predicted lineup for those listening. So that's Sanchez. I still think Cucurella might keep his place at left back. I have Silva and Disasai at centre back, and Reece James, as we were told, will start at right back. Caicedo and Fernandes in central midfield with Gallagher in the 10, and then Sterling and Palmer flanking Nicholas Jackson. For Liverpool, Kanate, Gomez, Gravenberch and Jones are all available. They were all pictured training yesterday, and yeah, as mentioned in the Man City section, expecting Gomez to start ahead of Tsimikas at left back for this match, just due to his defensive prowess. Also, I think Kanate will probably come back in for Matip. So just going through the predicted lineup, it's Alisson goal, Gomez at left back, Van Dijk, Kanate, and Alexander-Arnold at right back. Obviously, that can be Alexander-Arnold inverting into midfield as well. We have Alexis McAllister in the 6, flanked by Gravenberch and Szoboszlai in midfield. Klopp has a lot of options now in midfield. He's obviously got Harvey Elliott, he's got Jones back. He can play Gakpo in that midfield 3. So it will be interesting to see how he sets up. Szoboszlai's guaranteed starter, and McAllister usually would be, but he's obviously one of the players that has just come back from international duty in South America. And the front 3 then, as predicted, is Jota on the left, Sal on the right, and Gakpo up front. That's just a nod to what Klopp has been doing after international breaks, which is not starting Núñez in particular, Diaz, and as I say, McAllister is at risk of that rotation too. He did speak in glowing terms about Darwin Núñez again. You can see the quote above, that Darwin's in a good moment and they want to use him as often as possible. I think that's really encouraging if you own Núñez in FPL. I think he's an easy hold. Depending on who you have on the bench, you could bench him this week. As with City, there might be early Liverpool team news, so we might find out before the deadline whether Núñez starts or not. And yeah, I think it'll very much depend on who your first bench is, and what options you have, whether or not you just start Núñez. I think if he doesn't start, he's going to get like 30 minutes anyway. Yes, he is playing against, one of the best, if not the best defence in the league, but he also is an XG Hoover, so I don't think there's any real issue with having him in your starting 11. I think he's clear first choice up front for Liverpool now. Pretty much barring coming back from South America, I think he's going to start most games. Obviously, that's going to be in question for Game Week 15, which is the midweek fixture, and Liverpool play Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday. And we know what Klopp is like with kickoff times, even though now he says he loves the 12:30 p.m. He's kind of tired of explaining why those early kickoffs are kind of so detrimental, especially after international breaks, which is fair enough. But yeah, it's like even though Darwin is first choice, there is going to be rotation there with those 3 games in 1 week, the 3 game week deadlines in 7 days. So yeah, pretty much see the lineup that Liverpool pull out tomorrow, and they'll have Europe next week. And yeah, I mean, personally, I think Darren Núñez will still be really, really tempting going to Game Week 14. Even if you'll be pretty sure you'll get 2 starts once he's fit, and then if you throw in a sub appearance, it might be worth it. It's going to depend on your squad setup and whether or not you have space for another forward, or you want to sell Watkins, even though he plays Bournemouth in 14. I think that'd be quite a tough sell. So it might depend on if you have the space for a third forward and if you have the money for one too. So yeah, I think really, really interesting player to keep an eye on. My prediction is that he doesn't start against Man City, but it will be interesting to see what Klopp does with his lineup. For Arsenal, Martin Odegaard is back in training. He was pictured on Thursday taking part in the group session. Arteta was his usual self when asked about Odegaard. Basically said, we have another training session today, but that he's progressing well, that kind of thing. But yeah, he has been pictured in training, so it's at least a positive. Obviously, at times that may not mean anything for Arsenal, but in this case, yeah, Odegaard is available. Whether he starts or not remains to be seen. Gabriel Jesus is also available. Played the full 96 or 7 minutes for Brazil on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. He obviously travelled back after that, and Arteta referenced that immediately when being asked about Jesus. He did say he's available, but that his condition would have to be checked, considering the long haul flight and playing the entire match as well. So I would be very surprised if Jesus started, considering those factors. Ben White trained individually on Thursday, so he's still working his way back after missing out in Game Week 12. Arteta said that White will be in contention to play if he trains on Friday. So it's a bit of an unknown. And Aaron Ramsdale is going to start in goal because David Raya is ineligible. So if you happen to listen to the podcast, the predicted lineup is Ramsdale, Zinchenko and Tomiyasu as the fullbacks left and right, with the doubt over Ben White's availability. Gabriel and Saliba at centre back. Jorginho in the midfield pivot, either side of him, Rice and Odegaard. And the front 3 of Martinelli left, Saka right, and Trossard as the nominal centre forward. I think Trossard will keep his place ahead of Nketiah. I'd imagine his minutes won't be huge because he's now got Nketiah and Jesus going to be on the bench as options for Arteta during the game. And yeah, the midfield, it's just a question of, I think if Odegaard is fit, he'll just slot back in. So it's either going to be Jorginho to stay in the pivot or else Rice to move into that number 6 role with Havertz in there instead of Jorginho. Obviously, Havertz in a more advanced role if he plays. So it'll be interesting to see how the Arsenal midfield pans out now that Odegaard is available at least. And I guess we'll find out more about his fitness and expected minutes going forward heading into game week 14. For Newcastle, Alexander Isak remains a doubt. Eddie Howe declined to give an update on the striker's availability. There were some training pictures from Thursday and he wasn't seen. He's definitely approaching availability, but yeah, it's sort of up in the air at the moment. For that reason alone, not an FPL player I would be investing in ahead of game week 13. Sean Longstaff's also a big doubt. On the other hand, Almiron and Cher both in training, so should be fine. Lewis Hall is ineligible, which is good news for Tino Livramento owners. I would say he's pretty much a cert to start. I've predicted him at left back. Livramento owners want Livramento to play at right back, and Trippier owners want Trippier to play at right back. I just think that Trippier is so crucial to the way Newcastle create chances and attack down that right hand side that putting him left back is obviously going to dent that a little bit. So I think he might just use Livramento on the left. Of course, we could just see positional switches during the game too. Wilson's out for medium term again. Howe didn't give anything on when he's expected back or not, but he's definitely out for a few weeks. And Harvey Barnes is still a couple of weeks away, definitely a couple of game weeks away. It's going to be into December at some stage when he is even back fully training, I'd say, first, and then back in a match day squad. So I think it'll be a few weeks before he troubles the first 11 as such. With Sven Botman, again, Howe wasn't given much up even though he was pressed on it. He admitted that there's a possibility that he won't be back anytime soon. So they hope it's not too long. They hope he can rejoin the group. But he also said, there's a chance that either of those things happen. I suggested a few days ago on Twitter that Lascelles is an absolutely fine pick because it did not seem to me that Botman was going to come back anytime soon. I know there's varying reports and things being said, but yeah, I'd be really, really, really surprised if he's back before the new year. He's been out for a while. They would need to get him back training fully first. It's obviously a complicated knee issue because, he's been to a specialist. He's obviously not back training with the group in any way yet. There's been reports that he's been out in the grass and that kind of thing, but it doesn't seem straightforward, unfortunately, for him. Again, I think Lascelles is the standout budget defender option. And I think I said in a video I recorded recently as well that even if Botman was to be back, Lascelles will still get plenty of minutes because the games are so packed together. Botman would just never be playing 3 games in a week, even if he does make a quicker than expected return to training. So for that reason, yeah, I think Lascelles perfectly good pick. I understand that people are kind of, if they're buying him, they kind of want to bank on him playing in 18, especially with Newcastle's run from say game week 17 fixture run. I guess that's not an absolute banker because there's the possibility that Botman is back. Personally, I think that's really quite unlikely, and over the December period, I think Lascelles' expected minutes remain strong. For anyone listening on the podcast, the predicted 11 is Pope in goal, Livramento at left back, Sheeran, Lascelles, and then Trippier at right back. Willock, Guimaraes, and Miley in midfield with Joelinton and Almiron on either side of Gordon playing as the nominal centre forward, false nine type of role. I just think that with Isak, he might get some minutes and maybe he starts, but the fact that he wasn't pictured in training and how didn't tell us anything, and they've got this enormous PSG game on Tuesday, makes me think he could be spared. Maybe they give him 20 minutes off the bench, but I would be hesitant to predict him to start, considering that match on Tuesday and the fact that he's only returning from injury. And yeah, I think I'm not sure you could invest in him even going into game week 14 because like three Premier League matches in that week, game weeks 14, 15, 16, he's just not going to start all of them. There's obviously the argument, and probably applies to Darwin Núñez as well, that if you get two starts, there might be enough explosivity there to warrant investment, and yeah, I appreciate that. So I would definitely have Isak on the watch list because, as we all know, if one of the Newcastle strikers is out, you probably want to own the other one. But at the moment, one is out, one is just coming back from injury. They're really, really stretched. How talked about, how they had fatigue in their performance against Bournemouth. Not that that's going to happen every week, but he spoke a good bit as well, and you can read the quotes on my in my Twitter thread. About how December is really, really testing generally for a Premier League club, even without Champions League, which they have, and Carabao Cup, which they also have. So yeah, I think Isak definitely one to monitor, and maybe we'll have a better picture of it in a week's time heading into game week 14. But for the moment, I would avoid buying and see what happens this weekend. For Tottenham Hotspur, Udogie is available, expecting him to come back in at left back. Postecoglou, said that Udogie had a good couple of weeks. He obviously didn't travel as a precautionary measure. Spoke about it in my early team news video on Tuesday that we expected the left back to be back available, and so it is, which is good news for owners. Obviously less good news for owners is that Romero is suspended, so probably looks like Ben Davies and Eric Dyer at centre half. Pape Sarr is a doubt. He didn't train today. That's Friday, so Skip or Bentancur could deputise, or both could play in midfield. It'll be interesting to see how Postecoglou sets up. I think Lo Celso could be a really interesting FPL option at 4.8. Again, Cole Palmer's price kind of makes Lo Celso a non-entity right now, but he's definitely one to keep an eye on if he's going to be playing that Maddison role. Obviously, he's not James Maddison, but if he's going to be playing that particular role at that price regularly, definitely one to monitor. I think the midfield three is the hardest to call for Spurs. Basuma is suspended, so one would expect Højbjerg to play in the 6. Postecoglou has been speaking about Bentancur's ability to play there as well. So the predicted 11 is Vicario on goal, Udogie at left back, Porro at right back with Davies and Dyer at centre half. Højbjerg, Skip and Lo Celso in midfield, with Johnson and Kulusevski flanking Son. When Postecoglou was asked if they had any injury issues following the international break, he said that Ashley Phillips, a young defender, is now injured, and he also spoke about Sarr, and he said that everybody else came back fine, so that'll include Son. So he's good to go for the Villa home game on Sunday. And yeah, Sarr could still play if he trains tomorrow. Obviously, they have an extra day, Spurs this weekend. So yeah, I think the midfield is the most difficult call there, and otherwise should be relatively similar to how they set up in Game Week 12. For Crystal Palace, Jordan Ayew and Jefferson Lerma arrived back to train just today on Friday, so there might be a doubt over their minutes. But they did train, so they're probably fine. Hodgson had some really interesting comments on Eze. He said that it's a bone of contention between, we'll say, managers and sports science / medical departments on how long it takes a player to be back into the flow and ready to play, start, which for FPL is what we're looking for. And Hodgson said that basically the sports science people generally think it takes longer, but he doesn't necessarily believe that to be true. He pretty much thinks they can just, lock and load and play away as he was before the injury right now. So yeah, if you're punting on Eze, I think he's a perfectly reasonable buy. I'm saying Boom was probably going to be a lot more popular, but yeah, I think Eze is definitely one to consider if you own Matoma and you're selling him. And yeah, his expected minutes for even the busy period sound really, really good. Like, he might make 90 in every game, but sounds pretty much like he's going to start every game. And yeah, hopefully Hodgson doesn't run him into the ground. And yeah, I don't know if Elise is going to be fit enough to start yet. I think once he's ready to start, he will be back in the 11. But for now, the predicted 11 is Johnston in goal, Mitchell and Ward as the fullbacks, Anderson and Gay at centre back, Lerman and Decore in midfield, Schlupp left, Ayew right, and Eze central behind Eduard. For Everton, in fairness, you couldn't blame Sean Dyche if he had turned up 10 points deep and didn't fancy give out team news, but he did tell us that Amadou Onana is unlikely to play in Game Week 13. And Seamus Coleman is going to be back in the matchday squad. He played 90 minutes for the under-21s midweek, so that's a big milestone in his recovery. So yeah, he'll be in there competing for that right back spot with Patterson and current first choice Ashley Young. So the Everton predicted lineup is Pickford in goal, Mikolenko and Young as the fullbacks, Branthwaite and Tarkovsky at centre half. It's Idrissa Gueye and Garner in central midfield, McNeil and Harrison on the wings, and Decore behind Calvert-Lewin up top. For Sheffield United, admittedly, I do think Vinny Souza is going to play for the Blades in midfield instead of one of McAtee or Norwood, who are both in the predicted 11. The wonderful website that I've used to create these lineup graphics, createformation.com, did not appear to have Mr. Souza in as an option, so we've gone with a slightly altered graphic. But yeah, no, I do think he's going to play. I also think McBurney is going to start. McBurney and Ahmedhodzic both back in contention. The tweet above, Heckingbottom was basically saying, why would they risk either player against Brighton when they, could leave them for another 2 weeks and have them ready for Game Week 13, which is how it panned out. Ahmedhodzic is an interesting one. He is going to start going forward once he's fit. I guess his minutes could be managed with the upcoming period, but yeah, once he's fit, he's going to play most games. And that could have an impact on Baldock, who has recently been playing in the back three as the right centre back. He's 3.8 in FPL. I can totally understand why people would have bought him at that price, or some people might still have had him kind of rotting on the bench or whatever since his injury. But yeah, 3.8 is obviously a magnificent price. Again, has a fixture in game week 18. So when Ahmed Hodzic comes back in, it will be interesting to see who he replaces. If I had to guess now, I would say Trusty is the likeliest to drop out. But there's also the chance that Baldock drops out. Good thing with Baldock is he's naturally right wing back. Jayden Bogle is playing there at the moment, doing pretty well, all things considered for Sheffield United. He is carrying an injury issue, not specified, but he's been training and he is available. And Heckingbottom praised his performance, particularly towards the end against Brighton in game week 12. So the expectation is that he will continue to play. Again, there's every chance of minute management for him. So between those two positions and the two players that Baldock is competing with, he should get still a lot of minutes over the hectic schedule coming up. So yeah, I just want to keep an eye on for Baldock owners, or again possible investors at that price, that there is a good bit of competition for his place now. But the fact that he can play multiple positions is helpful. And yeah, I think McBurney being available, he offers Sheffield United a lot. I think he's going to go straight back in. Be very surprised if him or Ahmed Hodzic played anywhere near 90 minutes. But yeah, I'm guessing that McBurney comes straight in, and that will be at the expense of McAtee or Norwood, with a little change here or there of the 11. So the predicted 11 for the podcast listeners is Fodderham in goal, back three of Trusty, Robinson and Baldock, Thomas and Bogle as the wing backs. In midfield, I reckon that McAtee is going to drop out, which will mean it'll be Sousa, Norwood and Hamer behind a front two of Archer and McBurney. For Bournemouth, Max Aarons is out for a number of weeks. So Adam Smith is the likely deputy at right back. Philip Billing is available. He missed out in game week 12. And Andoni Areola said that everyone bar his international contingent, which is quite extensive, trained on Thursday. So shouldn't be any surprises in injury terms in the Bournemouth lineup. The predicted 11 is Neto in goal, Kelly, Senesi, Zabarni and Adam Smith, Cook and Christie in midfield, Tavernier, Kluivert and Semenyo as the attacking trio behind Dom Solanke. That's unchanged apart from the injury to Aarons from their 2-0 win over Newcastle in game week 12. And Iriola just had some nice words to say on Solanke as well, that he's a complete number 9. And he also had a bit of a go at any FPL managers who are considering Solanke just since his 2 goals against Newcastle, saying that, people only talk about him when he scores, but that the performances have been more or less the same level, which Iriola thinks are of a very high level. So yeah, I can see why people are going for Solanke. He costs 6.5 in FPL. They have a nice run of fixtures. He's on penalties if Bournemouth ever get one. They haven't got a penalty for a long time. And yeah, his numbers are decent. Yeah, there is definitely an argument that there'd be no word about him if he hadn't scored against Newcastle. I think there would, because Bournemouth fixtures are much improved now. They started off the season with a really, really tough run, and yeah, I don't think anyone really thought Solanke was going to be a pick away to Newcastle. But he's coming into at home to Newcastle, but he's coming into a run of very good games now. I do think the Chris Wood factor probably plays into it now as well. Those two teams face each other in blank game week 18. It's a home fixture for Forest, where Forest are pretty strong. Don't hate it for Solanke, but preferred for Wood. And yeah, I suppose another bonus for Solanke is that he's going to play. His expected minutes are extremely high for every game, with the midweek games coming up and the Christmas crunch period. So he does have a lot of positives as an FPL option. Definitely one at least worth considering for the next few game weeks. For Nottingham Forest, Taiwo Awoniyi is out for months after having groin surgery. He was managing an ongoing issue. The club was managing, I suppose, with him, which I think even people were maybe thinking about him before this news, but with the glut of fixtures coming up, I think he would have been a risky pick anyway. He's out now, unfortunately for him. So Chris Wood is 4.9 million in FPL. So I think there could be a bit of a hard on in the community for him over the coming game weeks. He's got Bournemouth at home in game week 18, which is also a really favourable fixture. That's the blank for Man City and Brentford, so you'll probably need most of your bench players or your fodder to be playing that week. So he's actually a really decent option, depending on your formation and budget and all that kind of thing. He put up 1.7 XG at home to Luton in game week 9. Obviously, incredibly favourable fixture, but that is absolutely enormous. He scored twice, but that's a huge XG. That's non-penalty too. So yeah, I think at 4.9, really, really interesting option. Just for example, I have Alvarez in my own team. Not really that mad to sell him, but I do want to buy Mbeumo for game week 14. And one of the options is Alvarez down to Wood. I think for a budget striker, he's going to be the clear standout for a good few games. He obviously is going to have a Origi for competition, but when Awoniyi has been unavailable, Wood was into the lineup straight away. So I think it's fairly clear that he's ahead of Origi in the pecking order. And I suppose from the FPL perspective, with Cooper, you're never totally certain on who's going to play and who's not, and who's available and who's not. It's just the way he is in his pressers, and that's the way it pans out, and that's fine. So in terms of buying a Nottingham Forest defender, especially with the amount of defenders they have available, I think it's quite risky. For example, Murillo is a doubt this week, and I think he might have been the favourite of the back four in FPL terms to buy if he was available. I don't have him in my predicted lineup because there is a doubt over him, but it is possible he just plays too. And that kind of thing generally will put me off buying a Nottingham Forest defender and player a lot of the time. But yeah, the good thing with Wood is that Awoniyi is 100% out, and he's not going to play till next year. He's not going to play for a good long time, unfortunately for him. So it is Wood versus Origi for the centre forward spot. Obviously, they could play a false 9 as well if they wanted to. I guess that's possible, but so far it's been Wood if it hasn't been Awoniyi. So I think he's going to pick up a lot of traction. Could be a stand-up option for your FPL teams. So yeah, the other player there's a doubt over for Forest is Danilo, central midfielder. Again, with Murillo, it's like the same situation. If he might play, might not. But at least we got the definitive news on Awoniyi, so that was good. Anthony Langa's in training. Wasn't said whether it's full training or partial training because he's coming back from a knee issue that he picked up against West Ham. He went for a scan, didn't go on international duty. It was actually Langer who got the 2 assists for Wood in game week 9 as well, so that's interesting. And yeah, I think he starts if he's fit. Callum Hudson-Odoi is working individually at the moment, so he almost definitely isn't available for this weekend. Cooper pending. But they are light-ish on wing options, so if Alanga was out, I wouldn't be totally surprised to see a back five come in to have the wing backs giving the width. Cooper's obviously used that formation a lot previously, more so back four these days, but yeah, they don't have a huge amount of options on the wing, so could see that if Alanga doesn't make it, and that could be good for Gibbs White because he has been pushed out a bit wider in this formation they're playing at the moment. If they went to a 3-5-2, Gibbs White would essentially probably be playing right off the striker and definitely in more central areas. So it's just something to keep an eye on. But it sounds like even if Alanga did happen to miss this weekend, that he's going to be back soon. He has been playing really well, and that formation has been kind of set for Cooper recently. So even if it was a 3-5-2, it mightn't stay like that. But yeah, Gibbs White's a decent midfield option. Should be on penalties. Chris Wood takes penalties for New Zealand, so he obviously has a track record and stuff. But there's nothing to suggest right now that Gibbs White is going to either give those up to Wood or that Cooper decides that Wood is his first choice penalty taker. There's nothing to suggest it at the moment. So for the time being, Gibbs White, as far as we know, is on penalties. So probably again he's an option to consider. He's relatively cheap, and obviously has the same game week 18 fixture as Wood, Bournemouth at home. So that's Nottingham Forest, and just for the podcast, I'm going to read out the predicted lineup. So it's Vlachodimos in goal, from left to right, Toffolo, Niakate, Bowley, who is expected to take the place of the probably injured Murillo. Aina at right back, Dominguez, Mangala and Sangare in midfield, with Elanga and Gibbs White either side of Wood up front. For Wolves, Pedro Neto is not close to return. O'Neill has said that the winger has to go through a lot of tests and checks before he's going to be back training with the group following his hamstring injury. So yeah, I wouldn't expect him back anytime soon, and there's a lot of games in a short period of time right now, and it doesn't sound like Neto's going to be back safe in the next 4 game weeks or so. Just want to keep an eye on. But yeah, he's definitely not going to play this weekend. Lamine and Doherty are both flagged. Lamina with an ankle issue and Doherty with a hamstring. O'Neill says they should both be fine. Nelson Semedo also has a flag, but he's been pictured in training, so he should be good to go at right wing back. O'Neill has said that Santiago Bueno is the likeliest to replace Craig Dawson, who is suspended. He picked up his 5th yellow card in game week 12, so he's got a 1-match ban for game week 13. The only player that was not back at Wolves following the international break was Wang Hee-chan. So O'Neill said hopes that Wang should be fine. There's no known issue or anything like that. Just he hadn't arrived back at the club at the time of the presser. Sounds like Pablo Sarabia will earn minutes off the bench. He obviously came on to great effect in game week 12. He is very cheap in FPL, but the price of Cole Palmer kind of makes a lot of other options unnecessary risks, definitely in Sarabia's case. Could be one to monitor if he breaks into the team and he's that cheap. But for the moment, it sounds like he's going to earn his minutes from the bench. That's the case with Hugo Bueno too, but he's one to note. Had been out with an injury, back in training now, and as you can see, O'Neill's quotes above are quite positive, and saying that Bueno is somebody that can, impact the starting 11. So I know people are looking at Wolves defenders, and they do have a nice run of fixtures, and they obviously play in blank game week 18. I wouldn't be completely hanging my hat on Aït-Nouri's minutes. I don't think there's any reason for him to drop out or anything like that. But he does have strong competition for his minutes now, which is going to reduce his expected minutes somewhat. And again, with the schedule being so hectic, it's something that we could see as a bit of rotation for Aït-Nouri. So that's one to sort of keep an eye on. I mean, Aït-Nouri is 4 or 5, so yeah, the rotation risk is probably built in. But it's good to know if you are investing that his main competition at left wing back is back in training and available, and as the manager says, is going to be pushing to get in that starting 11. So predicted XI for Wolves is Jose Sa in goal, back three of Totti, Kilman and Santiago Bueno, Aït-Nouri and Semedo at wing back, midfield Gomez, Lamina and Bellegarde, with Cunha and Hwang up front. For Burnley, precious little in the way of team news from Vincent Kompany. Ekdal and Benson could both be back, but they're going to be seriously lacking match fitness, so extremely unlikely to trouble the starting 11 anyway. There are doubts over Muric and Cork, and Lyle Foster remains unavailable. From the tweet above, you can see Kompany has said on team news, if there's anything else, I'm sure we'll update you by Saturday afternoon. So that's his way of operating. So makes Burnley one of the more difficult 11s to predict. For the podcast listeners, the predicted 11: Trafford in goal, Taylor at left back, Bayer, O'Shea at centre back, and Vitinho at right back. Midfield three of Brownhill, Cullen and Berg, and a front three of Koleosho and Goodmanson flanking Amdouni. Could easily be Jay Rodriguez up front, which would probably see Cullen miss out. He has missed the last couple of games, had previously been pretty pivotal to the way the company wants to play, but whether or not he's trying to move away from that or he just wants different options he obviously wants different options depending on the opposition, that kind of thing. So I'm going for Cullen to slot back in and Rodriguez to miss out. But yeah, it could easily be the former Burnley striker up front with Amdouni and Koleosho either side, and Goodmanson operating either in the attacking trio or maybe in the midfield trio. And yeah, he's got a good lot of options. I don't think anybody is buying Burnley players at the moment. I guess it's just one to keep note of. A bit similar to Nottingham Forest, that if you're investing in a Burnley player, there's always a bit more risk that they could just, I suppose it could happen with any club, but like when companies giving up so little, there's a risk they could just not turn up, or there could be something going on that won't be revealed pre-FPL deadline. I suppose Taylor is the most popular at 4.0, and yeah, if you needed a budget option, I can see why people have gone there at the moment. I would definitely be buying Lascelles over Taylor if you need to get a budget defender. But yeah, Taylor's not a bad option to be mostly sitting on your bench. I mean, they obviously aren't keeping clean sheets, but maybe that'll change going forward. Seems a little unlikely at the moment. And yeah, I suppose you have to know that there's that risk there. They have quite a decent sized squad, so he does have a lot of options. So that's just one to note on Kompany. Just to go through the last three teams then, Issa Kabore is out for Luton Town. He's going through concussion protocols, not available for Game Week 13. Will be back, Rob Edwards hopes, for Game Week 14. Chidozie Ogbene is a doubt. Over at Man United, Onana's fine, Shaw will be in the squad, and Rasmus Højlund faces a late fitness test. And lastly, at Fulham, Issa Diop and Adama Traore remain sidelined. Just as a matter of time, I don't have the predicted lineups for those three teams, but if you would like one for any of those three, just comment under the video or hit me up on Twitter and I will get back to you with that. No problem whatsoever. Thanks very much for watching. If you can subscribe, that would be awesome. And yeah, I hope this video helped, and catch you on the next one. Thank you.